What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the pod. I'm happy you're here. I'm happy to be here. We're going to talk some more football today, and then next week we'll get back to the normal swing of things with football and UFC. Two dud cards for the UFC, not much to talk about. Next week we'll get back to the UFC stuff, but today we're here for one reason and one reason only. We're talking some Week 10 football. We're at that point in the year. The season has flown by. It's gone by very, very quickly. We're at that point in the year now where typically we would think we know where the league is at. We know the teams that are the top dogs, the teams that are going to be fighting for the number one pick, and the latter is true. We do know the teams that are going to be looking for the number one pick, looking for Mendoza or whoever's going to go number one in the draft. Right now, the NFL is as wide open at Week 10 as I can ever remember it. Every week, it feels like a team that we think is a surefire winner loses, and a team that we think is done comes back and wins a game. I have no clue what to expect this week, and that's what makes it so great. So we're going to jump into it. Before we do, we got to talk about the game that I just watched 10 minutes ago. I just fired up the pod. One of the single worst games of the year. Sucked that this was in prime time. This deserved to be a game played at 3 a.m. on some station that no one gets. But unfortunately, it was a Thursday night football game on Prime in which everyone was watching. The Denver Broncos, somehow, some way, they're 8-2, and they beat the Raiders 10-7. Barn burner. Not a great game. Not a great game at all. Both offenses looked abysmal, and we could kind of expect that from the Raiders considering what we've seen of them this year. It was disappointing to see Bowers not really do much at all because he just came off of such a monster game, but you have to give Denver's defense credit where credit's due. They're still elite even without Surtain. They've showed it multiple weeks in a row. And then as for the Raiders, I think the Raiders have this bad rap, rightfully so. They have not played good football at all this year. But their defense is better than people give it credit for. It has been this year. And obviously they've got Max Crosby, but they've got some real playmakers at linebacker and on the back end. Jamal Adams, who at one point was like an elite safety, he's kind of like a box linebacker now. He's actually not playing horrible football this year compared to what he was a couple of years ago, especially like towards the end of his tenure in Seattle. And then I think he was in Tennessee or something at one point. But the Raiders do have a sneaky good defense. But for the Broncos, even though the Raiders have a sneaky good defense, you can't be scoring 10 points. I don't care if it's a short week. You're at home. You're playing a team that just came off of a really draining overtime game in which they lost on the final play of the game. They went for 2 to win the game and they didn't get it. There's no excuse to only put up 10 points. Now, you got the win, and that was that. But I don't want to say the Broncos as a whole are not on fraud watch, but their offense certainly is because, especially me, I was thinking a certain way after the fourth quarter of that Giants game in which they scored 33 points in the fourth quarter and then what they did against the Cowboys. But, it very well could be that they did that because of those defenses. Because if you look back, go to the games that they played this year, their lower offensive outputs have always come against defenses that aren't horrible, right? I think back to that Chargers game week 3 earlier in the year. That offense did not look good in that game, and they lost that game against the Chargers in what was a very winnable game. This was another one where the Raiders' defense is at elite? Absolutely not. But they're a competent defense, and the Broncos have struggled. And I think part of that is Bo Nix. I think he has some flashes of brilliance, but there's some plays. There was a play early in the game. It was like a 3rd and 1, and he clearly had the edge on the defender. Instead, he tried to go for the big play, and as he was rolling to his left, he tried to hit a throw down the sideline. And the guy was open, but it was such a tough throw to make. It was on the sideline. And it's like, dude, just take the yards. When it's 3rd and 1, just take the yards. There was another play later in the game in which he didn't take the yards, in which he threw it down the field. I think it was to Troy Franklin. It might have been to Pat Bryant, actually. And sorry about that. And what ended up happening was the linebackers came down, they chased after him, he made a beautiful throw. That was great, but that was 1st and 10. You can make those gambles on early downs. When it's 3rd and 1, get the yards. So I still see some of the youth coming into play with Bo Nix. I think the Denver run blocking isn't exactly great because J.K. Dobbins looks like he's running really hard and really well, but it feels like he's getting met in the backfield very, very often. There's just some concerns with this Broncos offense right now. My number one concern, however, is the dude calling the plays. I think Sean Payton's play calling has, Sean Payton's been around for so long and been known as like an offensive guru of sorts for so long that people kind of just like whatever he does, they think there's some methods to it. This year, the play calling from Sean Payton has not been good. He's always been a big screen guy, but it feels especially just atrocious this year, how many quick screens he throws. And then my biggest issue tonight was there was at least 4 or 5 occasions, probably more, in which on first down they would run the ball with J.K. Dobbins, and he would get a chunk play. It would be like 7-8 yards. And what Sean Payton would do every single time after that was on second and short, he would run the ball again to J.K. Dobbins between the tackles, and this time the Raiders would stop him. That's why they had so many 3-and-outs, because they'd have second and short, they'd have bad play calling in which it was just run the ball up the middle again, they'd get stopped, and then third down they wouldn't be able to convert. And it was kind of like I was kind of getting pissed off because it was like, I understand it's second and short, a run play is not a bad option, but you've done this every single time you've had second and short off of a good chunk play on first down through the ground. You go back to the ground, and it's like, let's show some originality here. Let's get the play action game going, especially because Bo Nix is really good under play action. So that was a little concerning. It has been concerning all year. I've seen Bronco fans complain about it with the screen passes and the RPOs and stuff. So I'm not saying that the Broncos are on fraud watch, but I'm saying the offense is specifically. So let's see if they adapt. They have KC next week. They're going to get some rest. Obviously, so is KC because KC's on bye. That could be a rude awakening for Denver. KC, a team that needs wins, that could be a rude awakening for them. However, they are 8-2. They're going to be up, 2.5 games on KC going into that matchup. So they're in a good spot right now because they've won their games, but they've got to play KC twice. They've still got to play the Chargers again. They get the Raiders again. They play Washington, which will be a winnable match. They've got a ton of winnable matchups, and I think it's pretty safe to say the Broncos are going to be in the playoffs, but those games against KC and that game against the Chargers is really going to say a lot about this team. So that's all I have from Thursday Night Football. Also, Geno Smith is so tough. Let me just say that. Geno Smith was just playing on one leg out there. I don't think Geno Smith's a good quarterback, but I just think you can't deny the toughness from that dude. So that was Thursday Night Football. Pretty bad game. Let's move on to the games that hopefully won't be bad. I'll cover about 7 or 8 matchups that are good. Then I'll talk very briefly about the other ones that people don't really care about as much. Some big bye weeks this week. 4 teams on bye. KC is on bye, like I mentioned. Dallas, Cincinnati, and Tennessee are also on bye. If you wanted to see some atrocious defense this week, this is not the week for it because Dallas and Cincinnati, who are 2 of the worst defenses in NFL history, both get the week off. So good for them. Their defenses did not earn it whatsoever, but they get the week off. Also, RIP to Nealon, the defensive end for the Cowboys. That was really devastating to see. The dude just had a touchdown on Monday night against the Cardinals, so that was really devastating to see, and hopefully just prayers towards him and his family. So anyways, let's get into the matchups, and we're going to start internationally. People hate these. I don't mind them, especially when it's somewhat intriguing matchups like this one. The 3-5 Falcons. That's crazy to think because the Falcons were 3-2 at one point. They are now 3-5, are quote-unquote visiting the 7-2 Colts. Obviously, this is a neutral site game in Berlin, Germany. They've done Germany a handful of times now. Never been to Berlin, so it'll be cool to see how that atmosphere is. The London games are always great in terms of atmosphere, but the Germany ones especially are always really loud and really fun. Even last year, they did the game, I think it was in Munich, and it was Panthers-Giants, and both teams had like 1 or 2 wins at the time, and just the crowd was electric. This game's going to be a little better to watch for those German fans or those European fans. Indianapolis are 6.5-point favorites in this one, 48.5-point over-under. The big headline this week, of course, was Sauce Gardner got dealed to the Colts, and he's going to get tested right away. It sounds like he's cleared protocol. He's going to play, and he's going to have Drake London on him, who's coming off of a 3-touchdown game. So Drake London is... if he was in a better situation, I think many would speak of Drake London as a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. Sauce Gardner is definitely one of the top cover corners in the league, and I'm curious to see, will Indy shadow London with Sauce, or will they just ease Sauce in and have him play aside? I don't know, but this will be a big test for him, and it'll be a fun test just because Drake London's a big receiver and Sauce is a big corner, so just stylistically, it'll be a really, really fun matchup on the outside to see those two go at it. And, Sauce is going to have to make his presence felt immediately because that has been one very glaring weakness of this rather good Colts team this year has been the secondary and the pass defense. And they went out, they traded a lot to get a franchise-level corner. he's going to have to come in and immediately go, okay, Drake London, I'm on you. Now, this is Sauce Gardner's second international game this year, which is pretty crazy to think because he played with the Jets when they played in London earlier in the year. So hopefully fatigue isn't really an issue or anything, but obviously the Colts get the bye next week, so get through this one and then have a week off. As for Atlanta, I just have no clue what to make of this team. They've shown some awesome moments. I mean, that win against the Bills on Monday night was amazing, was incredible. They beat up the Vikings earlier in the year, but they've got 3 straight losses. It looked better against New England, but obviously still couldn't pull out a win. So we're going to see, man. This is going to really this could make or break the Falcons season because you lose this, you're at 3-6, and I think depending on how the loss looks like, if they do lose, if it's an ugly loss, man, I think Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson, I think people are going to be calling for their jobs. I've already seen it a little bit on this 3-game losing stretch, and I think the offense, I think Zach Robinson, I think that experiment should probably be over just because of the fact that, they have the weapons. I know the O-line's a little beat up, but they still have an above-average O-line, and it's just not happening. So we'll see about that. And Raheem Morris, I don't know. There's a lot of rumblings that he's just never going to be able to be a NFL-caliber head coach. I'm not sure. This is going to be a big one for him, especially because the Colts themselves are coming off of a loss, only one of their 2 losses this year against Pittsburgh, and that was a rough one. The Pittsburgh defense really got to Daniel Jones and really put pressure on him, and Daniel Jones and that Colts offense turned the ball over a lot. So we're going to see Indy 6.5-point favorites. That seems a little steep considering what just happened to them last week against Pittsburgh. But in my opinion, I think it's justified just simply because they still have Jonathan Taylor. And even though Jonathan Taylor got shut down by Pittsburgh last week for the most part, this Atlanta defense has been getting gashed on the ground as of recently in all their matchups. Ever since that Sunday nighter against the Niners when McCaffrey gashed them, A-Chain gashed them. Last week the Patriots ran the ball somewhat effectively on them. So I think this is a big Taylor game. I think this is a bounce-back spot for Indy going into the bye. If they lose, I think we start to sound the panic alarms a little bit. I think especially if they lose and Daniel Jones continues to look like how he did last week. If you just write that off as a bad performance, I have no problem with it because in the NFL, it's so competitive. Any team can beat any team any given week. This isn't college football. This isn't the NBA. But if Daniel Jones has another week where he just looks like that old, fragile New York Giants Daniel Jones, we might have some conversations about, okay, if Indy keeps slipping these games, can Jacksonville, can Houston somehow win that division late in the year? Is Indy going to be a first-round exit? So this is a big game for both these teams because this could make or break the season for Atlanta, and this could really, really get ugly for Indianapolis if they lose this one going into the bye. So that's that game. Let's get into the regular morning window games. I've only got 2 that I want to dive into in this morning window, and this one is a sneaky great game. Not a sneaky good game, a sneaky great game. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 6-2. They're hosting the 7-2 New England Patriots. Tampa Bay are 2.5-point home favorites here, 48.5-point over/under. Tampa's a little healthier. They're coming off of the bye. They're a little healthier. It sounds like Ibuka, who'd been playing through a hamstring thing, is a little more healthy. Still no Bucky Irving, who's their just unbelievable young running back. Still no Chris Godwin. So they're not completely back healthy yet. They're one of the teams that has had rather a lot of injuries this season. So we'll see how they look coming off of the bye. New England is humming. Obviously, I said it last week, I think Drake May is my MVP candidate right now. The one thing with New England, though, and it's been pretty alarming, is Drake May has gotten sacked a lot, especially these last 2 weeks. I mean, Myles Garrett had 5 sacks alone against Drake May. Drake May also turned the ball over a little bit last week against Atlanta. So, I've kind of cooled that performance against Atlanta. I've cooled on the Patriots a little bit. Drake May would still be my MVP pick at this point in the year, but I've cooled on them a little bit, and I actually really do like Tampa as 2.5-point favorites here. I think with how bad the pass protection has been for New England in recent weeks, you're playing a Tampa defense that, one, has a pretty good front, but also Todd Bowles is so good at getting pressure, so good at exotic looks on the front line, and we'll talk about that next game with Brian Flores as well. He's one of those defensive coordinators that really finds a unique way to get pressure on quarterbacks, and Drake May has been okay with the pressure. He's been pretty good under the pressure, but you can only do so much as a quarterback if you're getting sacked that many times a game. And I think Todd Bowles and that Tampa front could really take advantage of it. Plus, they're coming off of the bye. New England still hasn't had their bye yet. And we're at that point in the year where we could very well see those teams who have the late season buys starting to fall off a little bit until they get that bye week. The bye week is so important in football, and there's a handful of teams like New England, like San Francisco, like Carolina, who have buys like week 14. There's some teams that have a week 12, week 11. So this is that point in the year where we see those bye weeks. Those teams that have already had bye weeks are playing good ball, playing fresh, and those teams who haven't had bye weeks yet, the injuries, the fatigue, it's getting to them a little bit. I think for that reason, plus the O-line issues for New England, give me Tampa Bay minus 2.5 in this one. Still an amazing game. Some really fun teams. It'll be in Tampa, so the weather will be good. These teams will be able to throw it all over the place. I'm really excited for this one for sure. The other morning game I want to get into, another sneaky, fun game. Baltimore, our 4.5 road favorites, going to Minnesota to play the 4-4 Vikings. Baltimore's 3-5, 49.5 point over/under. Vegas thinks this is going to be a high-scoring game. I do as well. And look, man, the Vikings looked really good last week. JJ back against Detroit in Detroit. They looked really, really good. And if they keep their momentum, we could look at potential shootout type matchup in this one for sure. On the flip side, the Ravens are the healthiest they've been all year. I saw their injury report. They don't have anyone on the injury report, which is a miracle considering how beat up they were earlier in the year. I wish the Niners could get healthy like that, but life as a Niner fan isn't fair. Sorry, I won't make this about the Niners. I apologize. But Baltimore, they're the healthiest they've been all year. I still have some question marks, though, because they've got Lamar back. Henry's humming again. People are like, oh, Baltimore, look out. I've still got some questions. They beat up on Miami, but the offense didn't exactly look like great against Miami. They were blessed with some good field position a lot of the game. That first half, they looked really stagnant. And Lamar, man, I don't know if I'm just noticing it this year or if it's a thing that he's doing more this year. He is taking way too many sacks. It was before he got hurt against Miami, after he came back. And this is not the team to do that against, because I just mentioned him, Brian Flores is a really good defense coordinator, and he was dealing last week against Detroit. If he starts dealing again, throwing these crazy blitzes, playing Lamar the right way, oh man, Minnesota could take advantage of this game early if they got to Lamar a couple times, forced the Ravens to punt or got a strip sack on Lamar. It is still Lamar. It is still Derrick Henry. It is still the Ravens. So I'm not saying Minnesota is going to win this one, but it could get really interesting. There's a lot of question marks in this matchup, and I think the two biggest ones are at quarterback. It's Lamar. Is he going to take the sacks? Is he going to look, because he did look hesitant to run against Miami, is he going to be more willing to take off and run, which is part of Lamar Jackson's skill set? He's not Lamar Jackson without that. On the other side, it's JJ. JJ looked pretty freaking good against Detroit, and the verdict is still out on JJ. The verdict is still very much out, because earlier in the year, he started 2 games. Against Chicago, it was 3 abysmal quarters, and then the fourth quarter, they came back, won the game. And then Atlanta, he had a ton of pressure on him that game. He got sacked a lot. He got hurt in that game, but it did not look good. He misses a bunch of games, comes back, plays Detroit, looked really good in his home state. I'm not sure what to make of J.J. McCarthy. This is going to be a big litmus test, because Baltimore's defense is healthy, right, which they haven't been all year. This is probably the best spot Baltimore's defense has been all year. J.J.'s at home in this one. I don't know what to make of this game. I'm not giving you guys who I think is going to win. I really don't know. There's so many question marks with this game, and that's what makes it so fun. I think it could get really high octane. I think we could see 2 offenses really humming with superstars, Derrick Henry, Justin Jefferson. It'll be a fun one. It'll be a fun one for sure. The other morning games, there's 5. I'm not going to really get into any of these. These aren't exactly great matchups. The 2-7 Giants are going to Chicago to play the 5-3 Bears. The Bears coming off of that crazy win in Cincy. The Bears should take care of business in that one, I'd assume, but you never know. The Bills are playing the 2-7 Dolphins. People are going to think the Bills are going to smoke them here. The Dolphins always kind of play the Bills tight for the most part, even though the Bills always end up winning. They had that Thursday nighter earlier in the year, and Miami really played them close. I think it'll be a close game, but Buffalo still needs to take care of business, especially because they're still trailing New England in that division. AFC South matchup, 5-3 Jags are going to play the 3-5 Texans. These teams are like, the Jags are like an ugly 5-3. The Texans are 3-5, but that's an ugly 3-5. You know, the Texans, we're at this point in the year, right, where these 3-5 teams, these 3-6 teams, if they lose a game, you start kind of writing off their season a little bit. Obviously, crazier things have happened, but the Texans are one of those. They've won the South back-to-back years, and if they fall to 3-6, right, in this game, that would mean Jacksonville's 6-3, and they've got a game over you, and that would mean Indianapolis, who's 7-2, if they move to 8-2, or if they're still 7-3, whatever their record would be. We can kind of safely say, okay, this might not be it for Houston this year. No C.J. Stroud in this one too, which Davis Mills. So, other matchups, NFC South matchup, a lot of divisional matchups this week. 1-8 Saints play the 5-4 Panthers. If the Panthers take care of business, we're gonna look at Carolina and be like, these guys are really 6-4. Yeah, they're 6-4. Dave Canales is a hell of a coach. Rico Dowdle's a hell of a running back, and that defense is playing good. They need to take care of business in this one if they want a chance at the playoffs, just to keep pace with the rest of the NFC. And then the game of the week, the 2-6 Browns play the 1-7 Jets. That game is whatever. Those are two teams that are going to be competing for the number one pick. So maybe it's better for whoever loses that game instead of whoever wins that game. So, yeah, afternoon window, pretty good this week. And it's pretty good because we've got two big-time NFC West matchups, the first of which, 405/105 game, Seattle, 6-2. I'm saying it. I've been saying it. Seattle is my NFC Super Bowl pick as of right now in this season. They're hosting the 3-5 Cardinals. Seattle are 6.5-point favorites, 45.5-point over/under. Look, Seattle's a great team. Seattle's really good. They played this Arizona team week 4 earlier in the year on Thursday night, and it was a close game. It was a close game. It was a game in which Seattle was in the driver's seat for most of it, and then Arizona snuck back, scored twice. I think they either tied the game or took the lead. Seattle ended up driving down and kicked a field goal at the buzzer to win it. But, this is like Arizona looks better, right? They just do. Kyler got put on the IR, which to me is a soft benching. I don't doubt that something's not wrong with, something's definitely wrong with his foot. They wouldn't put him on the IR if it wasn't. But this more feels like hey, even if Kyler is healthy, we want to stick with Jacoby, so let's put Kyler on IR to, 1, make sure his foot gets right, and 2, so that we don't have to deal with the media backlash and all the noise that comes from benching your number 1 overall pick quarterback who's on a massive contract for a vet who plays the exact opposite way. But you can't deny it. The Cardinals' offense has looked better since Jacoby Brissett took over. I, on the pod last week, thought and acted like Kyler was going to start that game against Dallas. Jacoby did, and Jacoby looked great. And the thing that Jacoby's doing the most that Kyler just doesn't do anymore, he's feeding his superstars. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a dog. Trey McBride is a dog. And with Kyler, it's just there's no conscious effort to give your playmakers the ball. It's spread it out, what the defense takes you. You have to do that as a quarterback, but you also have to realize you got to give the ball to the guys who give you the best chance at winning and the best chance at scoring. And that's Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride. Jacoby Brissett's doing that. So it doesn't surprise me that Kyler kind of got, quote unquote, put on the IR/soft benched, right? That's just how it is. So anyways, back to the matchup with Brissett, with the way this offense has been playing, even though they haven't exactly been winning games. I mean, they beat Dallas, of course. I think, man, Seattle is going to win this game. It would be stupid to pick Arizona outright. But Seattle are 6.5-point favorites. Arizona hasn't lost a game. They're 3-5. Those 5 losses, they haven't lost a game by more than 4 points, right? And there's some ugly losses against Tennessee and San Francisco, and then there's some competitive losses against Green Bay, Seattle earlier in the year when they played. So I do like Seattle to win, but give me Arizona plus 6.5 points in this one, just because divisional game, they know each other very well. Arizona always plays Seattle tight. We saw it earlier in the year, and Arizona, no matter who they play this year, it's close, right? So I like Arizona in this one. I to at least, not let Seattle cover the spread. And if Arizona pulls it off, then we might halt the steam on the Seahawks Super Bowl hype train a little bit. But Seattle's still great. I'm not trying to take anything away from Seattle. I'm just, I spoke very highly of them on the pod earlier in the week, so I want to make it known that I think Arizona's being a little disrespected, especially with Jacoby Brissett. And this could very, very well be a closer game than people are anticipating. The other NFC West matchup, we're going to go a little south, go to Santa Clara. Another rematch from another Thursday nighter earlier in the year that was really, really good. The 6-2 Rams are visiting the 6-3 49ers. The Rams were 4.5-point favorites. The over-under is 49.5 points. They played each other week 5, Thursday Night Football earlier in the year. One of the best games of the year. It was a freaking amazing game. The Niners were very beat up going into that game. They were down a lot of guys. They are still equally as beat up. A little differently, though, and I think this time the way that the injuries are kind of stacking up a little bit, I think this really favors in the Rams' favor. There was a ton of offense in that game, a ton of offense, right? The Rams virtually were unstoppable if they weren't fumbling the ball, right? Kyron Williams had that fumble at the 1-yard line in which D-tackle Alfred Collins basically Mike Tyson haymaker punched the ball out. It was an incredible play. No running back is holding on to that ball in that situation. It was just an unbelievable play. Those plays probably won't happen again in this game. And a big key in this game is last time they played the Rams, the Niners did, they had Fred Warner on defense. There's no Fred Warner this time. And this defense, especially as of recently, has just been atrocious. They can't get pressure. They can't tackle. It has not been good at all. And when you're playing Stafford, who's an MVP candidate, that's very worrisome. Now, on the offensive end, the Niners are a little healthier. They have George Kittle this time. They have Jawan Jennings this time, which they didn't have last time. And they have maybe will have Brock Purdy. We're not sure. My guess is it's going to be Mac Jones again. It doesn't sound like any Ricky Pearsall either for the 49ers. So, the Niners and Rams games are always close. But the one thing that's usually pretty common in these games is the Niners usually kind of play the Rams better in Levi's South down in LA rather than they do at Levi's, the actual Levi's in Santa Clara. And I think that last time there was just a ton of crazy plays that stopped to end the game. The peanut punch at the 1-yard line that knocked the ball out. There were so many crazy plays in that game last time around. I don't know if the Niners will be able to recapture that magic in this matchup. And I also think that last time it really helped the Niners that it was a short week. We always see it. One of the greatest gaps between good teams and, whether it's bad teams or mediocre teams is when you have to play each other on a short week. This isn't on a short week this time, and the Niners are just coming back from a long flight from New York. The week before that, they played Houston. So they've had two 10 a.m. games across the country. The Rams just played at home. Obviously, it's not a long flight to San Francisco from LA. So give me the Rams at -4.5 pretty comfortably. Not a short week. I don't think they'll repeat the crazy mistakes that happened in that last game. But regardless, I hope it's a fun one. And obviously, the Niner fan in me is really rooting for the Niners. So, yeah, let's do it, man. The other afternoon game, sorry, I was just looking at my phone. Geno Smith's injury was a thigh bruise. It wasn't anything crazy. That's kind of what I figured looking at the replay. But, man, Geno Smith was so tough to play through that in that game. Anyways, the other afternoon game is the Lions and Commanders. That game looked really awesome before the season started, and now where we're at with the Commanders now, not at all. Lions are 5-3, Commanders are 3-6. No Jane Daniels, no Terry McLaurin. The Commanders are beat up. They're so beat up, man, and they need to pack it in for the season. The Lions need a win desperately. They'll get it here. Dan Campbell teams usually don't mess around against teams they should beat, so yeah, man, just rough for the Commanders. That was, a fun divisional matchup in the playoffs last year, and to see where these two teams are. Detroit's still good. They're not nearly as dominant as they were last year, but they're still good. And the Commanders have just a brutal follow-up year for what was a pretty magical run last year. So, yeah, man, let's move to Sunday Night Football. Steelers, 5-3, coming off of a great win against Indy. They're playing the 6-3 Chargers. Chargers 2.5-point favorites, 44.5-point over/under in this one. So not super high. Pittsburgh looked so much better last week against Indy. Their defense especially. I mean, it looked like those Pittsburgh defenses that are swarming, force turnovers, get to the quarterback. That's a big thing that the Steelers need. They need to be able to get to the quarterback. And look, it's setting up very well for them to do that again this week because I've said it on this pod, offensive tackles, especially when you have star offensive tackles, will make or break your offense. And the Chargers have two of them, and they've lost both of them to season-ending injuries. Joe Alt is done for the year with his second high ankle sprain. He's going to get surgery on it. So without Joe Alt, this Chargers offense has looked abysmal this year. The games without Joe Alt, it has been really hard for them to move the football, Herbert gets pressured a lot, and the big thing is they struggle to run the ball. And even though Greg Roman's taken a more pass-heavy approach than he normally does in his offenses with this Chargers offense, they still need the run game to be able to operate. And Kamani Vidal, who's filling in for Hampton, and Najee Harris, who tore his Achilles earlier in the year, has looked good. But behind an O-line without Joe Walt, it's going to be hard to move the Steelers' defense around, run the ball effectively, and that's just going to put your quarterback as just a target back there for T.J. Watt, Highsmith, Hayward, all those other Pittsburgh D linemen. So I think that the Steelers, I do like Steelers at plus 2.5 in this one. You know, they're going to L.A. It should be a fun game, right? And I would imagine that, you know, like in past, there was a Sunday Nighter 4 or 5 years ago. It was this same matchup in Inglewood, and it was a really fun offensive game. I don't think it'll be that this time. I would imagine it's going to be a more defense-heavy game because the Chargers also do have a really good defense. And, you know, they've got Khalil Mack back. Odafe Owe is there off the other edge. I believe Jerwin James is playing in this game. So two good defenses who are both playing well. Steelers haven't been great all year, but it's looking better in recent weeks, especially against Indianapolis last week. So give me Pittsburgh in this one. It just favors their way. They've got, you know, if T.J. Watt and Highsmith and that D-line can just get to Herbert, you know, Herbert's awesome, but it doesn't, when you have pressure in your face every play, it's not going to matter how awesome you are. So give me the Steelers in this one as road underdogs. I like it, man. This is the big one. This is the big one. Monday Nighter. This is potentially the best Monday night game of the year, and very interesting compared to where we thought it might be like through a couple weeks of the year. The 6-2 Eagles coming off of a bye. They're going to play the 5-2-1 Packers in Lambeau, Monday Night Football, prime time. What a game. Green Bay 1.5-point favorites in this one, so essentially a pick 'em over-under at 46.5 points. And it's so weird. I keep going back and forth on this one, but my brain keeps going back to one thing. Matt LaFleur teams, always when they have stinker games, which they do, they've had them this year, they've had them in the past, it seems like they always come back and respond really well. And I think that we could very well see this because, let's face it, the Packers' effort against Carolina on offense last week was flat out atrocious. Jordan Love did not look good. They're not running the ball great. This is a much better Philly defense than it was a Carolina defense. But I think LaFleur, I trust him as a game planner. His teams always play good when they come off stinker performances like they had against Carolina last week. So initially, I do like Green Bay in this one, but there's a reason it's a pick 'em. Philly's coming off of a bye. They're rested. And they just traded for Jalen Phillips, right? Their pass rush was probably their big issue, and that's kind of what these Philly teams in recent years have been so reliant on defense, is having this front that just gets pressure on you. They got Jalen Phillips from Miami, who's an excellent young player. So I really like that move for Philly. Howie Roseman made an excellent move going and getting Phillips. Revamp pass rush. Brandon Graham's out of retirement. You know, this could be fun. And that defense with Jalen Phillips, with Brandon Graham, coming off of bye, they even traded for Jair. I didn't even think about that. Jair's back playing in Green Bay for this one. We'll see if he actually gets run. He hasn't gotten much run this year with Baltimore. But the big thing that my head, you know, is thinking about right now is Tucker Kraft tore his ACL last week, and he had kind of stepped up as the guy in Green Bay. And I think that's the one thing that has hurt Green Bay's offense in these Jordan Love years is they've always been in the playoffs. They've always been pretty solid, but it's just been a bunch of like guys contributing. They haven't had a guy to throw to, a go-to target on offense, right? They've got Jacobs in the backfield, but you need a go-to pass catcher. Kraft became that for them this year, and I think that's why we saw some really elite offensive performances from the Packers this year. They don't have him. He tore his ACL. He's done for the year. Who's going to step up? You had a first-round pick on Matthew Golden. Is he going to step up? Christian Watson's in his third game back from a torn ACL, but you gave him a big extension in the offseason. Is he going to step up? Is Romeo Doubs going to step up? Someone needs to, because if you don't, you're just going to run the ball with Jacobs, and it's going to be really easy for defenses to key in on you, you know? So they need a go-to guy to step up, and this is the week to do it. Who knows who it'll be? My gut tells me it'll be Romeo Doubs because I think of those wide receivers, he's the one who's been the most solid, the most consistent, and the best separator this year. But someone's got to, because if someone doesn't, Philly's going to win this game. I trust LaFleur enough. I trust the Packers enough. Even though Philly's coming off of a bye, Green Bay played at Lambeau last week. They're at Lambeau again, and they get an extra day rest because it's a Monday nighter. Give me Green Bay in this one. I like them in a bounce-back spot here. Philly's looked better as of late, but Philly has looked very human this year. So it'll be a fun one. This is the game of the week for sure. It's a great game for Monday Night Football, and I'm going to try my best. I'll be at Disneyland. Quick flex. I'll be at Disneyland, so I'll try to catch as much of the game as I can, but I'm going to be enjoying my time riding roller coasters and meeting Mickey Mouse. So with that being said, man, that's week 10. Really fun week, and, this is the time of year. I said it in the open. This is the time of year in which teams really solidify themselves as players, and I think we could see that this week. And I think more than anything, there's some teams like Atlanta, like Houston, where they're a loss away from kind of writing their obituary to their season. So, some really crucial matchups this week, some big teams on bye, and we're at that point in the year. It's starting to get cold. Teams are starting to, it's a war of attrition. Teams are injured. Some teams have had byes. Some teams still need byes. It's fun, man. This is why we love football, and I'm excited for it. So, as always, I appreciate you guys being here listening to the pod. If you have any ideas for the pod, please reach out to me. I'm trying to make this as great as I can. This is just a way for me to practice speaking on camera, the social media algorithm, all that stuff. But, when I do something, I don't like half-assing it. I want to give it, my full effort. So if you guys have any suggestions for what could be better, what you want to see, any segments, please let me know. In the meantime, I appreciate everyone for being here if they still stayed till the end, and love you guys. I'll see you later.